One of the questions you may have soon after starting with modern SharePoint is how to move your classic JavaScript customizations to modern SharePoint experience. If you search this question on the internet, most likely the answer you will find is that it's not possible just to copy a JavaScript to modern SharePoint, and you should rebuild it to SPFx solution. I don't think that it's a good idea to rebuild every JavaScript customization you have, and in this demo I'll show you how to move your JavaScript to modern experience with very little changes. In this example we have classic SharePoint page with a custom slideshow. This slideshow is built with jQuery, responsive slides extension, and custom JavaScript in between SharePoint library, which simply pulls files from the library, slideshow library, and then formats it into the object required by the responsive slide extension. These slideshow images are stored in the slides document library, and then we simply query that library with CSOM and prepare the object. On the page itself we have content editor web part, which links to show.html file, and in that file we load all the resources required by the slideshow, and then we initialize the slides using onload functions method. This is pretty common approach with classic SharePoint. To move this functionality to modern SharePoint side, we'll first recreate the slides document library and copy all the files required by the slideshow. And then we'll also copy all the JavaScript from classic SharePoint to new modern SharePoint site. This is a straightforward copy. Now in our target site we'll install two SPFx solutions. These are generic solutions available at SPLMS GitHub project. Please watch introduction video on how to install them. At this point you should have content loader and resource loader installed in your site. Content loader is a replacement for content editor web part, and resource loader will enable us to load our custom JavaScript in a controlled manner. Now we have to do some changes to our JavaScript because some of the methods do not work the same in modern SharePoint. So this one is not available, and we'll have to replace it with this. Also, we'll go ahead and create resources.js in the site assets. In the resources.js, first we check for the page that we want to apply customizations to, and then we invoke our init method. So we're basically replacing the old way to do initialization with the new one. We'll also replace all the links that were pointed to test4 site, which is our classic SharePoint, to our new test5 site. Okay, all the changes are done, and now we can go ahead and insert our custom slideshow into our modern page using content loader web part. So this was the old URL. We'll change it to test5. and the slideshow works. Now, one more step I'd like to share with you is not mandatory, but it's a good idea to do. When you load your JavaScript like this in content loader web part, the actual loading will be done using SPe component load script method, which in turn relies on system.js library. So it's not exactly how you see here in the code. This library will be bundled together, and there will be additional layer between your browser and your JavaScript, which will affect the way browser cache works. And also, because of this await modifier, all this loading will be done in a serial manner. So the scripts will be loaded one after another. If you deal with small scripts, it's not really a big deal. In fact, it's even beneficial. But when you have a large library like jQuery with extensions, it's a good idea to have a bit more control on how you load JavaScript. So what I'm going to do, I will delete these links from show.html, and instead of loading it with content loader web part, we will load in resources.js. Like this. So here you can actually use any method you like for loading your JavaScript. System import will work. This will work just fine. But I like to use this somewhat old-fashioned method, which simply injects a script code in the body of your HTML. And then this when method awaits for this variable to be available before the next execution happens. So we first load jQuery, we wait for jQuery to be loaded, then we load the extension, and when both extension and jQueries are loaded, then we basically load the init function and execute it. In conclusion, I'd like to say that it's actually pretty easy to move your classic JavaScript customizations to modern SharePoint. Your core functionality, how you interact with lists and render user interface, does not have to change. The only piece that you will have to change is how you initialize your UI and perhaps how you load your custom JavaScript.